the continuing process of trying to get this new studio space, this new recording space to work. We're keep tweaking things. We're trying to change the lighting a little bit, although I see we've got a nice glare off the old forehead here. We might have to adjust the lighting a little bit during the music break, or maybe put a hat on or something like that. I'm not sure. We'll figure something out, but we're trying to work it out. We're trying to see if we can get a good setup here. Somebody said it sounds a little bit weird. I apologize for that as well. We're going to keep working through it and see what we can figure out. Try to make this space work. I think it'll be all right. I know there's a weird bump out back there, but you'll get used to it. I'm getting used to it. You'll get used to it as well. And in the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit of Pitt sports here on the Morning Pitt. It's Transfer Tuesday. It's Christmas Eve, and it's Transfer Tuesday here on the Morning Pitt, where we talk about what's going on with transfers and the latest from the transfer portal for Pitt. The Panthers have added 3 transfers. We mentioned this yesterday, just because they got 2 on Friday, and then they added 1 more yesterday. Another guy went into the transfer portal, and some movement on the transfer portal side of Pitt players who went into the portal, and they've since exited the transfer portal officially or unofficially. And there's a little bit to dig into there as well. So this is your Christmas Eve topic du jour. We're talking about the transfer portal because even though it's Christmas Eve, it's Transfer Tuesday. So let's talk a little bit of portal action for Pitt right here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Christmas Eve. It's the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hopefully you're all ready for the holidays. It's too late to buy someone a gift from HomeField Apparel.com, but it's not too late to buy something for yourself. You've spent the last few weeks, the last month, or who knows how long you've been doing your Christmas shopping. You've spent all that time buying gifts for other people. Now it's time to get something for you, and the best place to do it is at HomeFieldApparel.com, where they have great Pitt gear. They have great gear for colleges all across the country. I mean, I feel like they have a licensing deal with just about every school in the nation, and they have great t-shirts, sweatshirts, koozies, joggers, which are sweatpants, bomber jackets, dad hats. I mean, they have everything you could possibly want, and their Pitt stuff is awesome. It's got great logos, great designs, great material. It's some of the highest quality shirts and sweatshirts you're ever going to own. It's some of the best, highest quality sweatshirts and t-shirts and all those things that I own, and you can get it, of course, as always, with that special discount, 15% off your first order if you use the promo code PIT24. I don't know how much longer that promo code is going to last because we're almost out of 2024. But I do know you can use it right now. PIT24 will get you 15% off your first order. Go to HomeFieldApparel.com and get that deal right now. Promo code PIT24. All right, everybody wanted to know when Pitt was going to get some players out of the transfer portal. Pitt was, when are they going to land somebody? When are they going to bring somebody in? What are they going to... who are they going to get? When are they finally going to land someone? You look across the country, everybody's landing transfers out of the portal. When is Pitt finally going to get someone? Well, they finally got someone on Friday. Friday is when it came to fruition. They landed 2 guys, actually. They got a wide receiver from Florida State named Duce Spann, and they got a kicker from Murray State named James London. Let's start with Duce Spann, interesting guy. Went to Illinois initially as a quarterback. I actually remember Pitt sort of talking to him back in the day when he was coming out in the recruiting class. I believe in 2020. I forgot the exact, it was either 2020 or 2021. But he went to Illinois. He was a quarterback. And in 2020, three-star quarterback recruit. Moved to wide receiver in his second year, then transferred to Florida State. Not a ton of playing time over the course of his career. At Florida State, he caught 9 passes for 87 yards, had 10 rushing attempts for 46 yards. He threw 2 passes for 24 yards, and then he had a bunch of yards, almost 27 yards per return on kick returns, including a 99-yard touchdown, kickoff return for touchdown against Duke in 2023. At Illinois, once he moved to wide receiver, he caught 5 passes in 2021, 5 passes for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think you like that production. That's pretty efficient. You get 5 passes, you turn it into 124 yards. It's almost, 25 yards per catch? And you scored 2 touchdowns on 5 receptions. Pretty impressive. And the thing that really stands out about Duce Spann is the size. He's listed at 6'4" and 208 pounds. Obviously, that's bigger than any of Pitt's current scholarship wide receivers. Even if you kept Dejon Reynolds on the roster, that would be bigger than Reynolds. Reynolds was kind of the biggest receiver on the roster, and then he left. But even with Reynolds on the roster, Duce Spann coming in would add size. And he's not slow either. He's not this big, lumbering wide receiver. I think there's reports out there about him being one of the faster players on Florida State's team over the last couple years, which is impressive because, I think Florida State, for whatever you want to say about them, they've done, they've done well bringing in, speed and athleticism. I think they had a lot of things that went wrong for them this year. The speed and athleticism was not one of them. So, I mean, I think Duce Spann, if he's really got that kind of speed and he's got that kind of size, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's intriguing on the level of like a Bub Means, but maybe a little bit bigger than Bub Means at 6'4". I think Bub Means was probably more like 6'1", 6'2", probably listed at 6'3". Probably checked in around actually like 6'2" or a shade under. So you're looking at potentially a taller Bub Means. Not a lot of production. Duce Spann has dealt with injuries over the last couple years. So you have that is worth considering when you look at his production and the numbers he's put up. But I don't want to say they take a flyer on him, but as a guy that you're going to add in to go with Kenny Johnson and Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee when he gets back from injury, and then some of these younger guys that are on the come up, Zion Fowler-El and Tyreek Robinson, when you look at those, you add a guy like him in with that returning core, I think you got to like the potential there. They're bringing a ton of freshmen as well, so maybe somebody could make a contribution there. I think getting a wide receiver to add to this group was one of the priorities. It wasn't the top priority, might not even been the number 2 priority, but they don't necessarily, you got to remember, like when you add transfers, you're not necessarily adding them in the order of priority. Right? You'd like to be able to fill all of your needs right off the bat. You need 3 offensive linemen or 5 offensive linemen. You get those. That's the first thing you land is your top 5 offensive line targets or top 3 offensive line targets. And then the next thing you need is defensive ends. So you go get 1 or 2 of them. And then, you work your way down the list, but it's not the way it works. You get guys when they're ready to come. And Duce Spann happened to be the first one to commit. And so that's what they filled first, was that need for another wide receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and get another guy in addition to him. I think the ranks are pretty depleted right now. Konate Mumfield is done. Dejon Reynolds went in the transfer portal. Lamar Seymour transferred. And we've spent time, and we probably will at some point this offseason as well, going over the history of recruiting at wide receiver for Pitt over the past 5 years. And it's not good. You have a lot of classes that washed out. You have a lot, there's a reason that Konate Mumfield and Dejon Reynolds and Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee were like 4 of the top 5 receivers on this team this year. And they're all transfers. They're all guys who came in at some point over the last 2 or 3 years or this year from the transfer portal. And it's because the recruiting has largely washed out at receiver over the years. Kenny Johnson was really good, is really good. But, I mean, you go back to 2020, 2021, I mean, there's nobody left. Jordan Addison obviously was really good, but he left after 2 years. Jalen Barton and Jaden Bradley never really did anything. What's his name? Israel Polk is already in the transfer portal. Lamar Seymour is gone from that class as well. So you only have 2 guys left from a really big 2023 class where they signed 4 receivers. There's only 2 guys left. They signed 2 this year with Tyreek Robinson and Cameron Montero. So they're bringing in a lot of freshmen next year, but they have to, and they needed the transfers as well just to get enough bodies to kind of put out there. And so Duce Spann, if you're going to add to the receiving core, I think getting size was something they would like to have because there's not a lot of it on Pitt's roster right now. And then I think Duce Spann having his size plus the speed makes it appealing. And you can understand why they would want to bring him in. I don't know what you're going to count on him for. I don't know if you're looking at it and saying he's going to be their number 1 receiver or something like that, or he's going to even be number 3. You don't know because he doesn't have that much of a resume. There's not a lot to sort of build from there or make judgments from. But if you're going to bring in a 6'4" guy who can run like this guy can, who's a 6'4" guy who has a 99-yard kickoff return touchdown. Okay. Okay. Maybe that's the kind of thing Pitt needs to do, is go find guys like Bub Means. Like all the physical tools are there. Not a lot of experience or production at receiver, but the physical tools are there that you believe you can mold into something. And by the 2023 season, they finally did mold him into something, and he was pretty good over the final 8 games. If they can get that level of production, or even something approaching it from Duce Spann this year, that would be one hell of an add to the receiving corps. So that was the first one. The second transfer that came in, also on Friday, was James London. James London is a kicker from Murray State. He committed to Pitt. He's a scholarship player. He's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, and he is the Ben Sauls replacement. This season at Murray State, London went 14 of 19 on field goals, but 7 of his 14 makes were from 50 yards or more. He's got 3 of the longest field goal kicks in Murray State history, and made a 55-yarder. He topped out at 55 yards this year. He's confident, like most kickers are, that he can make one from 60 or 61 if he's so inclined to give it a try. But this is a need position. This was somewhere, obviously Pitt was going to have to replace Ben Sauls this season, and so it was a need. And either they could find an option on the current roster, find an option as a recruitable freshman, or go out and get a transfer. And they opted for the transfer in this situation. I think they probably, were aggressive in trying to get James London. And I think they wanted somebody who could come in and pick up where Ben Sauls left off. And look, if you can make 7 50-yard field goals, 50-plus field goals, I should say, in a season, you're pretty good. You're probably pretty close to Sauls' level. Now, he missed 5 field goals. He was 14 of 19. Sauls was better than that. I think he only missed like 3 or something. And so I'm not going to say that James London is the next Ben Sauls, but in terms of filling in that position for Pitt, he will be the next Ben Sauls. He's going to be Pitt's kicker for at least 1 year and potentially the next 2 years. Again, a guy with a lot of leg, and it fills a need. And there's nothing exciting about this. Nobody was sitting back saying like, oh, yes, they got that kicker. Awesome. I know you want to see big-time offensive tackles. You want to see big-time wide receivers and pass rushers. And those will come or they won't. We'll see. And we'll talk about offensive tackles in a second. But kickers very much a need, right? They needed to get a kicker. They needed a new kicker next year. And like I say, it was just a question of where they were going to get it from. Well, they got it out of the transfer portal, and it's a guy who's got a pretty impressive resume. So there was that. That's 2 transfers added in to the roster. And then yesterday, Pitt got another one. This was Kendall Stanley. And finally, my friends, they got an offensive lineman. A native of Charlotte. He went to Charlotte in the recruiting class of 2022. He was a 2-time all-conference player in high school, ranked one of the top players in the state of North Carolina. Didn't play at all in 2022, made 1 start in 2023, and then this past year he was a 12-game starter right tackle. Pro Football Focus says in those 12 games he gave up 15 pressures and 2 sacks. That's pretty solid. He's a 6'5", 290-pound guy. That's what he's listed at on Charlotte's website. And he'll come in to potentially be the starter at an offensive tackle position. And I think it's very much up in the air about who will start where next season. I mean, at some spots it's up in the air. I think Lyndon Cooper is going to be your starting center. I think B.J. Williams is be your starting right guard. I sort of assume those 2 are more or less locked in. But the other 3 spots are up in the air. Ryan Baer obviously returns after starting like half the season at left tackle and half the season at right tackle, so he's got that experience. But he's also versatile enough to step inside and play at left guard if you have 2 other options available at tackle. Now, Kendall Stanley comes in. He's one of those options at tackle. Whether he steps in at right tackle, which is where he played all of this season, this past season, I should say, at Charlotte, or if he's good enough, he steps into that left tackle spot. Either way, if he steps in at left tackle, then Barrett can move back over to right tackle or move inside to left guard if they get another tackle. And I think they do want another. I think they want at least 1 more tackle and at least 1 more offensive line transfer this offseason. I think they want to get another tackle in. I think the ideal scenario for Pitt honestly, would be to get 2 tackles, 2 starter-worthy tackles out of the transfer portal, slide Bear back inside to left guard, and then try to get 1 or 2 more depth guys to come in to fill out the offensive line, because you got to get the starters. We've been talking about this since the offseason started, probably even before that. You need the starters out of the portal. There's no question about it. But you need depth too. I mean, we saw this year what one injury was able to do. One injury spiraled this team to a 5-game losing streak. And I'm not going to say that the entire 5-game losing streak was on Branson Taylor's injury or a result of Branson Taylor's injury, but it sure as heck didn't help. And if you wanted to pick one event that directly led to the 5-game losing streak the most, that had the biggest contribution to the 5-game losing streak, it would be Branson Taylor's injury. So they need depth as well, and not just the injury, but the fact that they didn't have anyone really ready to step in. And okay, Bear moved over to left tackle. All right, that should work. But then that created a hole at right tackle where they tried Isaiah Montgomery and they tried Jackson Brown. You know, at one point they tried Terrence Enos at left tackle. They tried a lot of options, and maybe they should have stuck with those guys a little bit longer, although I think there were some injury issues at right tackle. But they obviously didn't feel great about the situation they were in having to play those guys. So, you know, I think the lesson learned there was get more depth. And so I think they want to do that as well. But the number one priority is getting starters. And Kendall Stanley coming in from Charlotte seems like a good option to be one of those starters. Now, we mentioned yesterday there was another Pitt player who went into the transfer portal over the weekend. It was Jordan Bass, sophomore linebacker from Virginia, entered the portal. He's gotten like a ton of power conference offers since then. I'm not surprised. He's really good. He's like 6'3", 205. He can run really well. I always say, like, put on Jordan Bass's high school highlights and don't just marvel at the defense. Watch the offense. Watch the fact that he's like going downfield and making plays downfield, that he's catching screen passes and running for 65-yard touchdowns on a screen. That's not what most outside linebackers are doing in high school. Guys who are built like him. Jordan Bass is a special player and has the potential to be a special player in college. I think he was one of the headliners of that 2023 recruiting class, quite frankly. The guys who came in as freshmen last year, he was a bigger name in that class than Rasheem Biles and Braylon Lovelace, even though Biles and Lovelace ended up playing ahead of Bass last season and this year. And I think Bass just looked at it, this is my assumption, I don't know why he went into the portal, but I think he probably looked at it and said, I want to play. I want to start. I want to play 50 snaps a game. And with Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles here, I'm probably not going to get the opportunity to do that. Barring injury, Jordan Bass probably wasn't going to crack into the starting lineup because you have Kyle Lewis, a first-team All-American, coming back, and you have Rasheem Biles, a guy who could potentially be an All-American next year, or at the very least an All-Conference player. So Bass probably looked at it and said, I want to be a starter. I want to play a lot. And he would have played a lot. I think he would have gotten a lot of snaps. He got a decent amount of snaps this past season before he got hurt. I think they would have been comfortable rotating him in rotating with Lewis or rotating with Biles. But I think Bass wanted a more prominent role. And so now he's gone. He made it 2 years here. Now he's going in the transfer portal. Like I say, he's got a ton of Power 4 conference offers. And he'll end up somewhere good, and he'll probably end up playing well. I think he's a really good player. It was a real recruiting win for Pitt to land his commitment a couple of years ago. It was a recruiting win for Pitt to hold on to his commitment all the way through signing day because he was certainly looking at other schools and was being pursued by other schools for understandable reasons. Now, sort of came to fruition, and he's off looking for greener pastures, as it were. So that was it. Pitt got 3 transfers in. They lost 1 transfer. A few of their guys have announced that they're where they're going. Or I don't know if they've announced. They've been reported of where they're going. Rodney Hammond was actually reported as going to Sacramento State. But then he tweeted that he has not made a commitment yet, has not picked a school yet. So we'll wait and see on that. Nakai Johnson is going to Tulsa. It's a long way from Homestead to Tulsa, West Mifflin to Tulsa, but okay. And Nate Yarnell reportedly is going to Texas State. Guy's a Texas native. Kind of thought he, honestly, when he went into the transfer portal, and I might have said this here or on the live show, or maybe I just thought it to myself. Sometimes I forget which thoughts I have in my head and which ones, I actually say on these videos. But I felt like, best thing for Nate Yarnell, go find a G5 school in Texas. Be a little closer to home, get a chance to play. And it looks like that's what he's doing. Going to Texas State. So as far as we know now, there are 5 Pitt transfers who have found a new home. Nakai Johnson going to Tulsa. Terrence Moore going to Toledo. Noah Bigelow went to Louisiana Tech. Montrevious Lloyd is at Bethune-Cookman. And Nate Yarnell is at Texas State. Still some guys out there we're keeping an eye on. Rodney Hammond, Elliott Donald, Lamar Seymour, Jeremiah Anglin, Dejon Reynolds, David Ojebwe, Ty Diefenbach, and Jordan Bass. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 players have left Pitt for the transfer portal. 13 scholarship players, I should say. And 3 have come in from the portal. So that's where we are with transfers. That's what's going on for Pitt with the portal right now. That's our Transfer Tuesday here. I guess we'll have another one next week on New Year's Eve, right? We have the Christmas Eve Transfer Tuesday. We'll have one on New Year's Eve, I think. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. We will not have anything tomorrow. All right? It's Christmas Day, folks. Okay? We're not going to have a Morning Pitt. We're not going to have a Wednesday Night Live show. Let's take the day off. I mean, we can hang out on the message boards and we can talk there, but let's take the day off. Okay? It's Christmas. So, from all of us at Panther-Lair.com, to you, your family, and everyone around you, have a good holiday. Have a safe holiday. Stay warm. Be with family. Be with friends. And we will catch up with you on Thursday. Okay? We'll talk about the Game Above Sports Bowl on Thursday morning. We'll get you ready for that. The game is at 2 o'clock. And then after the game, we will be live for the post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe. And have a great holiday, folks. We'll talk to you on Thursday right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.